Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. It's always fun and insightful when Stephanie Grisham comes back into the back room. We will talk with Stephanie in just a second, but first, thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review, and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Stephanie Grisham is the New York Times bestselling author of I'll Take Your Questions Now, What I Saw in the Trump White House. During the Trump administration, she served as White House press secretary and director of communications for both the president and First Lady, Melania Trump. She is the only person in history who has held 3 senior roles at once, while representing both the East and West Wings. Stephanie, welcome back into the back room.
I am glad to be here. Thank you.
So there's so much to talk about, but we really have to start with what is the most burning question in America today, and that is the sleeping and the farting in court. Now, you have worked for Donald Trump. I have to let my 12-year-old self out early. Otherwise, he's he's just going to run rampant through this whole interview.
It's a Friday. Go for it.
So, in kind of half seriousness, as someone who's worked with, as Michael Cohen calls him, Mr. Trump, and has seen him in lots of different scenarios, I gather. Is he known as someone who's fallen asleep during the day or in meetings? Have you ever seen any of that?
No, I haven't. And also the gas part was not only disgusting, but I've never dealt with that before. But you have to remember too, with us for the campaign, he didn't do anything until the evening. And then when we were in the White House, he didn't come down until 11 or noon. He was not an early riser. And so I think maybe it's mornings that are getting to him. I'm not sure.
Mm.
I never knew him to fall asleep. In fact, it was the opposite. He was awake a weird amount of the day.
Mm. I mean, it's, when you're facing an existential legal crisis, I mean, it is boring. I mean, it could put you to
Yeah,
sleep.
boring. And well, it's funny too, though, you notice that when his lawyers are up defending him, he's wide awake and leaning forward and really into it. And when, people aren't just saying great things about him, he's, supposedly asleep.
I
So
loved his post yesterday, which, because he's a pathological liar, pretty much anytime he says something, the truth is the exact opposite. So when he says, I wasn't sleeping, that, of course, means he was sleeping, because that's what
yeah, I mean,
what
he
Trump
got
does.
caught, it got reported. He felt like that means he's weak, and so he had to address it. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was.
And then the
Yeah.
ego jumps in with it, my beautiful big blue eyes were wide
Which is
awake.
funny.
It's crazy.
I didn't know they were blue. I
They're
was
probably
actually
not
thinking,
blue. He lies about it. The color of his own eyes, he can't even tell the truth about. Isn't that
literally,
crazy?
I
I
was
mean,
like, I don't know
seriously,
if
we could
they're
end this
blue.
conversation right now on that. Donald Trump cannot even tell the truth about the color of his own eyes. Here, we
I
broke news,
literally did
folks.
think that.
So, all right, I'm leaving my 12-year-old self behind, and I'm jumping straight through to my 64-year-old self. Serious
Okay.
question based on something you just said. It is, in a normal world, kind of disgusting to comment on whether an older person falls asleep or whether they fart. But doesn't he bring on that by himself because of the way he acts, the way he treats people, the way he mocks people's weaknesses, Joe Biden's stutter? Aren't we just living in different times now where it's open season on shit like that because that's the road he's paved for us all? Or are we supposed to be bigger than that?
Yes, and yes, I would say to that. I mean, I do think it's the road that he's paved, and I mean, the fact that was constantly saying "Sleepy Joe,"
Right.
for him to fall
Low
asleep. It's
energy
like
jab,
exactly. So I do think he has paved that, but I also do think we should be above it. I think that for me anyway, always going around talking about the people who adore him and, who are okay with violence or who believe his lies or spread misinformation. I feel like, well, none of us should be doing those things either. So, but it's hard. It's hard when he purports to be perfect and then you catch him doing something. Of course, it's human nature, I think, to want to point it out.
Yeah. Well, there shouldn't be 2 sets of rules, but there seemingly are. There's one set of rules for Trump, and then the rest of us are supposed to be above the fray. My default is to kind of fight fire with fire, just as a way I'm wired. And so if he's talking about other people, then you know what? he's brought it on himself if people are making fun of him. And, he has such a thin skin. And if he doesn't like it, then just don't do it to other people. But he has no impulse control, so he can't. And so
Yeah.
he's going to continue to invite that kind of stuff. I personally love seeing him lose his shit over it.
Well, I do too, and I enjoy because, a lot of times something will happen, and so he hasn't even had the chance to lose his shit, and I'll be like, "Oh boy, here it's gonna come. This is gonna piss him off," and then sure enough, it does. So yeah, I'm with you. I find some joy in it, and maybe if we can all just keep our barrels pointed at him, which I say very figuratively, um, and not other people, then it's okay.
Hmm. We're not even done with the second week of the trial. We've got
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 weeks left. Is he gonna make it? Like, knowing his personality the way you do, can he sit there for another few weeks without his phone, being gagged, going through all this, personal angst and not explode in ways we've yet to see?
I think that in the courtroom, I do think he can make it. I do. I think, I think he's very aware that this is a criminal trial that literally could point to jail time and that the jurors need to see him on his best behavior. And so, because of that very, I do think inside the courtroom, I don't think there's a shot that he's going to not blow up on, social media at some point. I imagine especially with Michael Cohen getting on the stand and maybe some of the stuff Michael will say. I just can't imagine him. And especially because they've been talking about now that, he's got this gag order and it's not fair because Michael Cohen is saying all these lies. Um, I think that even though Michael Cohen has now said, I'll stop doing it with social media. So for now, the former president isn't attacking. But I think once he gets on the stand, he's going to equate that to Michael Cohen being on social media and he's going to feel like he needs to defend himself. And I think he's just going to explode. I
Mhm.
would say that of all the people out there, Michael Cohen, I can think of three guys who know Trump really well, including all these really dark, tawdry secrets, and Michael Cohen's one of them. And that's gotta be freaking him out. It's just gotta be.
Mm. Why do you think he didn't attack David Pecker?
Um, I don't know. I've heard people surmise that David Pecker has other stuff on him,
Mhm,
which I could see.
mhm.
I did see that when, he was asked about it, he said he was nice. So I could see that. It had to be a completely just something that helped him. So that's just who Trump is. I don't think he would have said he was nice if it wasn't helping him in some way. So I could see that, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Some people have minimized the significance of this trial. Certainly several months ago, it's not important. There's much more important trials. This is about hush money. A guy cheated on his wife. He's paying off a porn star, blah, blah, blah. He was just trying to spare his wife the pain of a public scandal. I mean, you're rolling your eyes.
I am.
And I've rolled my eyes many times. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, the poor guy who fucked a porn star when his wife was pregnant is just trying to spare her the pain and suffering of a public. Give
Yeah.
us a
No.
break. I mean, isn't this trial about so much more when you look at falsifying business records and violating campaign finance laws, trying to influence the election? It really is. Georgia has an election interference case. Jack Smith in Washington has an election interference case. This is the New York election interference case, is it not?
No, I agree, and I know I was one of those people who, before this trial started, when I would go on TV or whatever, I would say, "This one's not as important as the rest." I'm bummed that this one's starting out first. My mind has changed a little bit, but only because now I think people are understanding it is also about election interference, which is ironically what he's always yelling about, that
Right.
everybody's trying to cheat him when he actually he started this whole thing. So, um, I think that, in the public and especially me work living out in the Midwest, this has been really obvious to me. People aren't paying attention to this. And so, like you, me, we're paying all kinds of attention to this for various reasons, but people don't know what campaign finance is
Hmm.
and why that's a big deal. People don't understand why falsifying business records would be a big deal. Because I don't think people have the capacity in their lives to sit down and think about that for 10, 15 minutes, or maybe they don't want to. I'm not sure. But I do think as it's going forward, it's not only people are able to describe it better that it is election interference, that he tried to make it so that nobody knew who he was because of, you know, the Access Hollywood tape had dropped. And I think that also people are being reminded of his complete and total lack of morality. I think the porn star, that stuff is everybody's like, "Oh, it's just so tawdry." Yeah, but it happened. He did cheat on his wife while
Hmm.
she was pregnant,
Hmm.
allegedly. I'm rolling my eyes there too. He did have a relationship with somebody, a Playboy bunny. Like, it is important for people, I think, to remember that.
It's funny you mentioned Trump talking about election interference. When I hear him blurt out election interference, to me, that would be like Jeffrey Dahmer screaming cannibalism. So you mentioned, do people know about falsifying business records? Doesn't the average person who pays taxes, don't they live in fear of an audit? And if they live in fear of an audit, it's because they falsified their taxes. I think maybe some people understand and get it, but it's like this Trump thing of like, it doesn't matter. It's crazy what they allow him to get away with that they themselves can't get away with. I don't know. We're
Um,
living in very strange times.
no, we are, but just quickly to the tax, the audits, to that example. Yeah, I would be afraid of that happening to me for myself, but like if my neighbor didn't pay their taxes or whatever, I wouldn't care. I mean,
Right. Wouldn't stop you
so I
from
don't
going over to the barbecue.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, this is a much bigger deal. And I
Yeah.
think that it's now being talked about as election interference and literally trying to get people to not know something before an election, that's a really big deal. And I think that that's starting to be something that's talked about a little bit better,
Mm.
if that makes
Sure.
sense.
And do you think we're all just so exhausted by the normalization of his barrage of offenses? All the indictments, the impeachments, the trials, the hearings, the appeals, the motions. It's dizzying. That's his special sauce, isn't it? It's like a machine gun,
Yeah,
and you're just constantly dodging the bullets, and nothing else matters. You can't think of anything else.
yeah, I think it's exhausting, and I think there's fatigue, and I think that so many things are missed because so many other things, the Time magazine piece, I don't know if you saw
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
just came out. There were so many nuggets in there that should
Sure.
be top of the news right now about what he would do in the future, which is really what we should all be focused on, right? Is
Hmm.
term and what he would do in the future and what he's capable of and the things he's openly saying he would do, but we're still now focused on the past and this trial. And so many things are being missed, I think. And it's exactly what you said. It's just there's so much going on. You cannot keep track of it all.
Hmm.
But right now it's just wall to wall coverage of this trial. And I do think people get fatigued by it.
Hmm.
And I think everyday people are like, "I don't care. I wanna know why my gas is more expensive."
Right.
And I feel like I'm just kinda yammering off political talking points right now, but it's true. People care about, their own households, their own bills, their own issues. I just don't think people are as focused. Um, and I was thinking too about, just him having gas, falling asleep, and how we were talking about that. I remember when was it President Bush that vomited at a state dinner? Okay?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that was, like, such big news for such a long time, and, like, we talk about this guy falling asleep in his criminal trial, and it's just a teeny little blip. It's just anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but
No, but
yes, there's so
you're raising a really good point because it's not just fatigue, it's normalization, isn't it? It's like if somebody did something once, then we can all focus on it. It gets the
yes,
media attention. We can analyze it for what it is. But he
yes,
does something like on a Monday, you'll be like, "Can you believe what Donald Trump what? What did he just say now?" Like, so you can't remember what he just said yesterday because you're too busy analyzing what he just said, and by the time you're not even done with what he just said on Tuesday, Wednesday, he hits you with something else. So the system never catches up with him. But he is sort of getting back to the original question of this trial and the importance of it. A former United States president is sitting in a criminal court as a defendant on 34 felony counts and could very well be by early June a convicted felon. So maybe just like a lot of things in life as a parent, you can be your kids exhaust you, but at the end of the day, they're fed, they're in bed, you got your job done, you did your work, like you get it done. Do you feel like we're getting it done in terms of holding Donald Trump accountable?
Yes, I wanna say yes. And I was thinking just the other day about, what's gonna happen here. Will this jury find him guilty or not? Yeah, I don't know. And if they find him not guilty, I think I'm gonna be like, "No, this is not working."
Rigged.
How but how yeah, rigged, but no, I think it is working, and I think that, the fact that we seated jurors, and there were people who were admitting, I couldn't be impartial, and I think the fact that the judge he's really kept this going, and not just this judge, but, in a lot of the
Mhm.
cases, I have been really pleased to see how a lot of these judges have held him to account and treated him, for the most part, like anybody else. So to a degree, I think we are doing a good job, or the system is doing a good job. But then, there's other things that make me mad, like when the fact that he has, violated a gag order 15 times, and anybody else would have been thrown in jail for a couple days.
Well,
It just,
again, it's like a parent. You're like, "If you do that again, I promise, I swear to God, you're gonna be in trouble." And then the kid
yeah,
does it
yeah.
again, you're like, "I mean it, you're gonna be in trouble."
This time it's
Like,
going to happen. Yes.
this is
And
what
he
it's
just,
like with him.
okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
he is I mean, the one thing Biden said the other night that I believe is true is at the White House Correspondents' Dinner is that he's running against a six-year-old, and that's what a six-year-old would do, just constantly.
Yeah.
It's like the scene in Kramer versus Kramer with the ice cream, you know? You do that, you're in big trouble. And the kid just says, "Fuck you, I'm taking that ice cream." So this trial, in part, is about Trump cheating on Melania when she was pregnant, no less. So it's not unreasonable that she's not been in court to support him, but screwed over political wives have often very bravely and loyally stood by their man through similar types of scandals. So Melania's absence from court is serving to feed the narrative that she hates him, their marriage is teetering, and, this is the proverbial nail. I know you've been a little outspoken on some of this stuff where it involves Melania, but what is your feeling on her absence from court?
It's nothing. It's completely normal. It doesn't surprise me at all. And, she hasn't been in any of the court, the last court case either. Like she wasn't there either. That's just not her thing. When all of this news hit, when we were in the White House, she about Stormy and about Karen McDougal, she said to me, this is his problem. It's not my problem. I'm not gonna be like Hillary Clinton. I'm not gonna walk out to Marine One holding his hand. And I applaud. I think that's brave of a woman
Mhm.
to stand up and say, "I'm not gonna stand next to you and pretend that this is okay." So I
Mhm.
always applaud that. I loved her independence there. So the fact that she's not there again, she's not. Why should she have to sit there and listen, and have all those media eyes watching her in the courtroom? Because that's what the story would be, is she twitched her left eye, she must be devastated,
Right.
why do that?
Mhm.
Got a getting ready for college. It doesn't surprise me one bit. I know she's just thinking, "This is your mess, buddy. You go take care of it." Now, I have been surprised that the kids haven't been in court.
Mhm.
I know Eric showed up the other day, but, they that family is so aware of optics
Mhm.
that it is surprising to me that they haven't been there.
So, yeah, well, that was my next question. By the way, how awesome would it be if Melania did show up and she wore that "I really don't care, do you" jacket?
Oh, geez.
Could you imagine?
That
Could you
jacket still gives me
imagine?
PTSD as a comms person,
Oh
so,
my god, I would pay her to do that. So
oh
yeah,
my
the kids, do you think I mean, Eric showed up once. Do you
Yep.
think Trump was like, "Eric, when all this is done, if I have any money left, you're not gonna get a goddamn penny if you don't show up in court tomorrow." Like, what do you think made Eric show up one day? Was he forced to? Because it's hard to imagine anything other than the fact that he is their meal ticket, and they gotta do even the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think that he was forced to. You got to remember, his wife is now the co-chair. Eric's wife, Laura, is now the co-chair of the RNC. Again, they are a family that knows optics better than probably anybody else I've ever known. And the news had started to say there's nobody behind him. So I would imagine that Laura said, "Hey, you should be there to, behind him." I'm sure the campaign asked if somebody could go. I'm really surprised Don Jr. hasn't been there because he's his dad's
Right.
biggest cheerleader. Um,
What do you
so that
think? I mean, what I
I
mean, Why
Is he out
hasn't
hunting?
they
I
kind of
literally was wondering, is he, like, out of the country hunting? Like, I don't even know where he
but that
is.
would be
So I
so
feel
bizarre. I mean, look, if I was on trial in a criminal court and part of the circumstances where I cheated on my spouse while she was pregnant, okay, I get why she isn't showing up. But my kids?
yeah.
Why would my kids not show up? Maybe my kids would say, "Oh, you cheated on mom or whatever, and that's we're horrible and we hate you for it." But, like, his kids don't seem to give a shit in that regard. So,
Well, and that's not their mom
yes.
either.
So it's
I
like,
mean, Melania, you know what I
it's just
mean?
but so right, which means even more so, they
Yeah.
should be there, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where their
No, I
loyalty
I do
is.
think it's odd. I have thought that it was odd for a while that the 2 boys haven't been there as much. Um, so I guess we'll see maybe next week what's gonna happen. I don't know if there's anybody there today I hadn't seen before we started this.
Mm. It's just very, like, Menendez brothersy to me, like,
Yeah.
something's what's being plotted behind the scenes? I
Yeah,
don't
right?
know. Do you think this trial, especially if he's a convicted felon at the end of it, will have any impact? Do you think people are gonna care on
I
the
do. I think that as you just said, I think that anybody, let's say anybody that voted for him in the primary, I don't think they're gonna care, and at that point, like, Republicans have chosen their team,
Mhm,
if you will, and I know
mhm,
that that's, like, way too simplistic, but I do think that it's one of those, like, when you love the Denver Broncos and then the Denver Broncos have a real shitty season and, 5 of the players turn out to be complete felons and one of them has a gambling problem, you still love your Broncos because that's your team.
right.
And I just feel like that's kind of the mindset right now, and everybody is so, like, against Biden. I don't love Biden. I mean, I've said that before, but, um I think that that independents though, and that suburban women, I think this is gonna impact them. I think this doesn't help him in the general election, no matter what. I don't
Mhm,
care what anybody says. And I do believe that there are women who will not even tell their husbands and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm gonna go and be a good Republican wife and vote," but I don't think they will. I
mhm,
think that this will have an impact. I really do.
mhm. And
This is my one shred of optimism that I have left. It's because it's all meaning, I gotta tell you.
fair enough. So I wanna ask you a follow-up to what you just said. Love is a very powerful word, so I don't even know if I love Biden. But I wanna know what your issue with him is.
I just think I think that they're both too old. I have a craving to see kind of a new generation of politician come in, whether
Mhm,
that's Republican or Democrat, I don't care. Um I think that, like, just to use current news right now, I think that he has taken too long to maybe, like, denounce all these protests at the colleges. I think that while behind closed doors, I'm sure he's been pretty strong with Israel on some of the stuff. I think that perhaps he could be stronger. Um, but I think that he's a morally good human being. I will say that. I think that he's a morally good person, and so, at this point, I can handle if I have policy differences with him. I don't believe in, free school for everybody, college tuition.
mhm,
I don't believe in that. That's not, but I'll deal with policies that I disagree with over, you know, w what I know to be just pure corruption.
mhm. And so does that mean you're voting for him?
Yeah, I've said that
Mm,
publicly, yeah.
mhm, mhm. How much do you think abortion, and I'm asking as a woman, you, not me.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thanks for the clarification. Yes.
These days, you never know what people are
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, yeah.
Um, how much is abortion, Dobbs, Roe, IVF, the constant attack on women's bodily autonomy, how much impact is that gonna have? Is that really gonna be, at the end of the day, one of the major things? Like, we can talk about, "Oh, this is pissing off this group, or that's pissing off that group, and, oh, we gotta worry about this." But are we missing the bigger picture and not talking enough about how America's women are enraged? Enraged.
I don't know if it's going to have a big impact, only because, again, the news cycles are such that, it was such a big topic for a while there, but now I'm not hearing it really be talked about too much. I
Mhm,
mean, in certain states it is, like with Arizona. Um I think that, as we get closer to the election time, it's going to be brought up more. And I do think it could have an impact. I've been really surprised, like here in Kansas, they overturned, I forget what it was, but overwhelmingly there was a something on the ballot with abortion,
Hmm.
and this is a very red state, and
Hmm.
overwhelmingly they went, they I think struck down a very conservative abortion law, but I don't know the details, so I'm gonna kinda stop there, not sound stupid. Anyway, I think that, again, that's one of those things that when people go behind the curtain and vote, they vote in a way that maybe they don't talk about on the other side of that curtain, and
Right.
so I do think it'll have an impact, and I think it's just gotta be put to the forefront, which I think it will be as we get closer to the election.
No, I tend to agree with that. And we saw what happened in Arizona. I think it was yesterday, and there's going to be a ballot measure there which enshrines the right to abortion in the state's constitution. So I think it's going to be a big issue. I think it's going to be bigger than most people are talking about right now because there's so much other noise out there that's hogging up the news cycle. But I think we've seen in every single election almost since Dobbs, every election, every special election, and ballot measure, 7, 8 ballot measures that have all gone towards the pro-choice movement. So,
Well, yeah, like I said here in Kansas, but
yeah,
but I will also say I think that while abortion will be a big topic, I also think immigration will and
sure.
should be a big topic, and
Hmm.
that's, somewhere that I personally believe Biden has failed miserably. So, I think that's gonna I do think there's gonna be some balancing out things that, they'll have to work on their messaging and, well, not just messaging, but maybe their actions coming up before the election.
That's a great point because that is the counter argument. We know that reproductive rights are going to fire up Democrats. We know that immigration fires up the right. The question is,
Well,
who's more fired up? Who's really going to get out and vote based on how fired up about something they really are or aren't? And that we won't know really until November.
true, but I would argue that, immigration has become Democrats are pretty interested in it too,
Oh, sure.
for the first time in years, I would say. And coming from Arizona, I'm a big border hawk. I'm very much about immigration and immigration reform, and but again, I think that the Republicans handed a perfect talking point for November to Biden, which is Congress came together, put together an amazing package, Democrats and Republicans were with border reform or immigration reform. And, Trump said, no, I don't want you guys to put it forth. So
Hmm.
we'll see what happens. I mean, the next 6 months is going to be buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride for sure.
It sure is. And I hope you'll come back and talk to me again about it.
Always, always.
All righty. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.